Coming up, winners from the Texas Blade Show Custom Awards. I get a great little gift from Five Door, which I'm very happy about. And we're going to take a look at old versus new cold steel knives. I'm Bob DeMarco. This is the Knife Junkie podcast.
Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast, your weekly dose of knife news and information about knives and knife collecting. Here's your host, Bob the Knife Junkie DeMarco.
Welcome back to the show. A lot of great comments this week, as every week. One of my favorites was from the great and powerful Pete Davidson from Down Under. He says, "Ha, thought you were going to pull out a Desperado. The Magnum is still cool, though." And he was talking about when I showed off my Cold Steel Magnum Tanto 12, the 12-inch Tanto that I've always wanted. He thought I was talking about another knife I always wanted, the Desperado. But the news is good, people. I'm in negotiations with Strings to get one right here. Strings, a great guy who joins us every Thursday night on Thursday Night Knives, has a Desperado, and we're negotiating a trade, and I'm very much looking forward to having one of those in my stable of Vaquero blades. Next one was from Walter Billings, 1633. He's talking about the Shed Knives interview. He says, "Outstanding interview. The enthusiasm, passion, application, and energy about knives is truly contagious in this video. Great job." Thank you so much, Walter. I appreciate that. Jack Billings of Shed Knives is a great guy, and he's got all the enthusiasm. He's got all the enthusiasm in the world, and he loves what he does. And so I'm really happy that all of that came through. The love of knives came through in that video as I try to make it come through in each one. A lot of people responded very positively to that Shed Knives interview. So thank you, one and all. All right, that said, let's get to a pocket check.
What's in his pocket? Let's find out. Here's the Knife Junkie with his pocket check of knives.
In my front right pocket today, and for a number of days, this is how it's working right now with my front right pocket EDC carry. I've been picking one and just kind of out of laziness carrying it for a couple of days in a row. But I think that that's good. That laziness is serving a purpose. I'm revisiting a lot of knives and carrying them more often than I have in the past when I go day to day changing knives. And I've been actually liking bonding with various selections. This week, for a number of days, it's been the ProTech Rockeye. Yes, this is the ProTech version of the Les George Rockeye, or VECP, VSEP. Just a beautiful, beautiful design. This was a knife I got, my first real nice automatic. Also, the knife that got me in, behind the wheel of a Les George knife. I always loved and admired the VSEP and the Rockeye, the custom version of the VSEP. And this was the only way I could actually get one affordably. It was about $200 at the time, which was a big stretch for me, but well worth it. And I've always loved this knife. This is in a very thin, slicey CPM D2, so that's powder metallurgy D2, an awesome knife. If this weren't mine, I would ask Peterbilt knife guy to pound it through a nail, because D2 has been doing really well in those nail tests. Some of the best results, which is lovely. I love it because D2 is still a great steel. I remember when this knife came out, D2 was somewhat of a magical luxury steel, and then that quickly got relegated to budget stuff, and I still think it's awesome. So yeah, I have a hair stuck in here. I'm not sure why, because you can tell I don't have much of it. The Rockeye from ProTech, great knife. All right, next in my back right pocket, left pocket, sorry, next to the bandana, I had the Jack Wolf Knives Diamondback Jack. This is the new release for March 2025, and it's a bolster locking version, front flipping version of the Venom Jack. Probably my favorite overall pattern by Jack Wolf Knives. It's a trapper handle with a really beautiful and compelling Wharncliffe blade, true Wharncliffe with that continuous slope from the ricasso. But the real unique selling proposition of this Wharncliffe is that downward descending straight edge. It's got a tip below the handle, and so that creates sort of a very powerful shearing motion when you're sliding this through material you're cutting, say cardboard, for instance, because it creates a triangle right there, feeding material in towards that tip, much like a recurve without the recurve. And then, of course, having that low tip also makes things real easy when you're doing that sort of pull cut. So really, really like this. Plus, as I mention every time I show this knife off now, because I've shown it off a couple of times, is how beautiful it is. In this particular colorway, material combination with the very tightly woven linen micarta in olive drab next to the blasted bolsters with that tumbled finished blade, fully flat, fully hollow ground S90V blade. It looks like a piece of military kit from World War II, and I really, really love it. Next up on me, been carrying this one quite a bit since I got it. The Mamushi Mini from Gross Motor Gear. I also have the Mamushi, the regular size, which if I had only gotten that one, I wouldn't have thought needed a mini, but I've really taken to this mini version. It rides nicely in the waistline here. I have a DCC clip set up for in the waistband carry. My large one, I've been putting the DCC horizontal carry on, and frankly, I have it on there. I haven't carried it as much, but this week I'm transitioning over to the larger standard version and going to wear it in that horizontal front scout carry. He sends all of his knives out with that little piece of bike inner tube. He doesn't put a clip on there because everyone's got a different way of carrying these things. But I like the bike inner tube because it's like a Ranger band, but wider, more surface area, and keeps the knife oriented how you have it positioned initially, because it just gives a little bit of gription, little surface tension, if you will, in the waistband or wherever you're going to carry it, and kind of keeps it exactly how you put it in there. It doesn't drift around because it's not a slippery surface against another slippery surface. This one, of course, has that beautiful snake manuki in there. Really, really fine piece, and a great Tsukamaki wrap on these Gross Motor Gear knives. Sean Old, the knife maker, is going to be coming on the show real soon. All right, next up and lastly, I had this for emotional support. This is the Station 9 number 12 Undercover. Just wicked and small but large. It's like a medium-sized EDC self-defense knife. You have all the benefits of that upswept Persian blade, but the way it's positioned with the handle downwardly angled, you don't have the point way up here. And the benefit of that is on a thrust, like this kind of a thrust, you're not overcompensating for the upward curvature of the blade. You can find where that point is easily. It's pretty much midline. It's a little higher than midline, but still, it's not in that upward position of a Persian. It also, in reverse grip, gives you this serration here on the back for gripping and ripping. You know what I mean? And this is like someone's coming in with a knife or a baton or something, and you block it with your arm and trap it there. And then I'm going to do this very gently. As you pull away to do other stuff, you're slashing and gashing through that arm or whatever, and going back into whatever your move is. Now, for me, this is all theoretical. I've done this kind of training in Filipino martial arts, and have, thank the Lord, have never even had to try to see if it works out there in the streets, the mean streets of suburban DC. But I like that it's there. I like the serration on the back edge. And this knife and all Station 9 knives are so beautifully made, but also really well designed and considered, because the two guys behind the effort, Westval and Tony Lopez, are both not only adept at martial arts and bladed martial arts, but also outdoors survival stuff. So I love their stuff altogether. All right, that's what I had on me. What did you have on you? I had the Station 9 number 12 Undercover. for emotional support, my ESK. Riding in the waistband today, I had the Mamushi Mini from Gross Motor Gear. In the back left pocket next to the bandana, I had the beautiful Jack Wolf Knives Diamondback Jack, the new release for March 2025. And riding shotgun right in my front right pocket was the ProTech Rockeye. Oh my gosh, lots of words today. All right, drop in the comments below what you carried. Always like finding that out. Got a lot of classy viewers here. I like to find out the kind of knives I should be getting. All right, coming up next, Knife Life News.
The Shockwave Tactical Torch is your ultimate self-defense companion, featuring a powerful LED bulb that lasts 100,000 hours, a super sharp crenulated bezel, and a built-in stun gun delivering 4.5 million volts. Don't settle for ordinary. Choose the Shockwave Tactical Torch. TheKnifeJunkie.com/Shockwave.
You're listening to the Knife Junkie podcast. And now here's the Knife Junkie with the Knife Life News.
All right, this one has caught my eye. I have to say, I probably won't be going for it, but it has caught my eye because I've always liked the Benchmade Freak and the Mini Freak from a distance. Now, the Freak and the Mini Freak came out at this point, I would say 8 years ago. This is just off the top of my head, but it's a knife that is really in that classic Benchmade utilitarian category, like I would say the Griptilian or the Bug Out. But this new one is a SHOT Show edition. You know, every SHOT Show, Blade Show, companies put out special editions of their popular knives. Look at this beauty. This is now available. You don't have to go to SHOT Show. You don't have to go back in time to SHOT Show 2025 in Vegas. You can get it from Knives Ship Free. And this little beauty is a, as I mentioned, no nonsense EDC, but this is a Ultim version. It's Ultim with that flint chip texture, so very grippy. But a cool thing about this, and if you look closely at this picture Jim has up on screen, you can see the guts of the axis lock and see the Omega spring and how it's anchored in there. And that's one of the exciting things about Ultim, is that it's transparent and it allows you to see the inner workings of the knife while being a beautiful sort of transparent or translucent ochre color. And I really like the way this one looks. Not always a huge fan of Ultim, but they put it next to this gorgeous amethyst Cerakoted M4 blade. And I just think it looks beautiful because, you know, purple and yellow on the color wheel are opposites and complementary. And so it's naturally going to look good. But the ochre tone, that yellow ochre tone of the handle and that subtle purple of the blade really pop off each other. And then you look at it's all accompanied with black hardware. I think it's just beautiful. So if I were to get a Mini Freak, it would be this one, but that's not what I'm in the market for these days. But if you are in the market for an awesome Benchmade Mini Freak, these are going to go quick and they are very limited. So go to Knives Ship Free to get one for yourself. You can also check it out through our affiliate link, TheKnifeJunkie.com/knives ship free. That's convenient. All right, next up is one from Gerber. We don't talk too much about Gerber here because, well, we don't like Gerber that much here, except if we're talking about the stuff from the 70s and 80s. But they've been doing some pretty cool stuff with EDC folding blades lately. And this one I would put in that category. This is the Gerber MiniSada. Yeah, that's right, the MiniSada. This is a modified and smaller version of their popular modified sheep's foot Slim Sada that came out in 2022. That was a 3.5-inch sheep's foot with a D2 blade and a flipper. The MiniSada is a 3.13-inch D2 drop point, so a little bit smaller than the original Slim Sada from which this comes. And I got to say, it's a handsome knife. I like the way this one looks. So the Slim Sada, the MiniSada has a flipper. It's got a D2 blade, but this one's a drop point. As I mentioned, it's got a center line point with a nearly full height flat grind on that D2 steel. The front, which we don't see in this particular picture or article. Instead of micarta, which is what the Slim Sada was, this one features an aluminum front. I love aluminum knives, just as a little side point, and a full steel frame lock side. Something Gerber's been doing that I really appreciate, and you can see in that picture on screen, is it's got an over travel plate. So you see that little green plate there. It's not just an over travel button or something hidden inside to stop the frame lock from being overexerted if under stress. It's got a full plate there, and what that does is not only stop the stop over travel of that locking bar, but it also gives your fingers a place to rest, so that when you're flipping it, you're exerting pressure on the plate and not on the lock. It doesn't make it harder to open the blade. So I really like this sort of Gerber over travel plate. It acts almost like a bolster lock acts. So an interesting thing. It's their thing. I haven't seen anyone else try and rip that off, but I really like it. So this one is 2.5 ounces and available now. Check it out. It's the MiniSada from Gerber Knives. Next up, I would just want to go through the Custom Knife Awards from the Texas Blade Show. Really, really cool stuff happening over there at Blade Show always. But I always love the custom knives that win awards, and well, pretty much all of them. But I wanted to go through this. All right, the first one is right up my alley. This is from Franco Knives, and from a maker. I think he's Brazilian, just from checking out his profile here. But the first one is Best in Show and Best Fighter. Check this one out. This one is a beautiful, long, slender clip point blade with a gorgeous, some sort of ivory handle and gold inlays. Here's what the judges said. They said, we felt his had the best technical aspects with the gold inlay and engraving. It's a very long blade, but has a short feel and is very wieldy, easy to maneuver. So I love this thing. As you know, I love the long, slender clip points and fighting knives in general, and this one is really floating my boat. Next up, this one is from Tom Overender, and this is a Best in Show contender, so I guess the runner-up for Best in Show, and it's Best Custom Folding Knife. And look at this beautiful thing. Look at the bolsters on this. Looks gorgeous. And then the inlay in the handle, the badge looks like a chess piece and a dog bone in one. The judges said the fit and finish, the action, there is nothing wrong with this knife. It's an awesome knife that's super clean. And I like how they say, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. But I hear where they're coming from. You know, you have to assume that everything in the category is awesome. But this one has no flaws to point to. And I would have to say again, look at those beautifully engraved bolsters. Absolutely gorgeous. All right, next one is Best Art Knife. And this one really would have appealed to the 12-year-old in me. It looks like a knife that you would see on the cover of those awesome fantasy books from the 80s with the really intricate blades on them. This one is Best Art Knife. Paul DiStefano is the winner. I think this dagger is beautiful. And what the judges said was it has a cohesive vision executed with no flaws. Its color, texture, and finish all tie together. And I would also say you could vanquish many a dragon with this thing, and many an orc. It's really, really beautiful, and solidly in that fantasy sort of category. All right, next up from David Lish is the Best Custom Bowie. And though I must say, I'm not a huge fan of the protruding pommel thingy, D-guard. It is positively beautiful. If I were to get this knife, I would order it without that D-guard and just stick with the sub hilt. But who am I? Let's take a look. The judges said the organic flow of the guard and fittings and the complication of doing the sub hilt all flow into one. The Damascus is well executed, and the knife is has near perfect fit and finish. And yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of that. It's only my personal taste that eschews that D guard, but really beautiful from David Lish. By the way, you should go and seek every one of these makers out on Instagram, support them there, and watch the beautiful, beautiful work they're doing as they do it. Next up is a chef's knife. This one is from Pedro Fornari, and it's Best Damascus. And I can see why. This thing is beautiful. Not just that incredible Turkish twist Damascus, but also the handle and how it all integrates. The judges said it's an 8-bar Turkish twist that's nearly perfect in execution. It's difficult to make, and it's an integral. And when we're talking about fixed blade knives, an integral is the handle, bolster, either the bolster or the entire handle is all in one piece with the blade. And truly an impressive work here. Look at that handle, just exquisite. And then the patterning is just gorgeous. It's sort of mirrored as you get towards the tip from the dorsal side to the pectoral side. Just beautiful. Next up, from a former guest of this show, Evan Nicolaitis, you know him for his Esnix knife brand. This is Best Custom EDC, and this is one of 2 knives that he won, one of 2 categories that he won this year. This thing's beautiful. What the judges said was, it's light, elegant, deploys quickly with little movement, and it's efficient. And I would say that that's a kind of a cold reading of this beautiful thing. They didn't say this is just a beautiful thing. I think it's going to be an incredible cutter for whomever owns it. I don't think they're probably not going to use it, but the way that curved modified sheep's foot is angled off the handle, it's going to be an incredible cutting knife. But when they say little movement, it takes very little for that flipper tab to launch that blade out. A gorgeous Best Custom EDC this year from the Texas Knife Show. Next one is Best Custom Hunting Knife from Josh Fisher. Josh Fisher's 1558 knife brand was featured last week in last week's overlooked fixed blade category, but this is from his Master Smith custom side of the house. The judges said, we all think this is a differentially etched Damascus blade with the Damascus showing on the spine of the blade. So you look at this, it's a beautiful Damascus blade, but you can't see it unless you look at the spine. It's lightweight with a great blade length for a hunter. I would also note the handle looks extremely comfortable, and it's some sort of beautiful burl wood. And then you see on the back strap, there's some incredibly detailed dimpling and stippling there for texture. Gorgeous knife. It would be great for any hunter crazy enough to use it in the field. All right, moving down, Best Custom Kitchen Knife from Luke Delmeyer and Richard Patterson. What the judges said, the blade shape is spot on. It doesn't have any undergrinds or overgrinds. Not sure what those are, just so you know. The heel doesn't rock. It's balanced and feels lightweight. I'll also add that handle, faceted, is quite beautiful in whatever kind of burl wood that is. Next up, the next one is the Best Custom Slip Joint, again from Evan Nicolaitis. And if you look at it, it's a beautifully made wine pull. It's for unbottling priceless bottles of wine, but it also has 2 blades on it beyond the sickle-shaped foil blade. What the judges said, the action is great, everything lines up, and it's beautifully well made. Of course, it's also got that incredible tortoise shell look to it. All right, Best Machine Custom Knife, Machine-Assisted Custom Knife was from Jared Oser, a great dude. He's also gigantically tall and handsome. What a great guy. But his blade is even more so. Look at this thing. The Best Mac, what the judges said, overall, it has clean lines, operates smooth as silk, and technically, it's perfection. Last up, a sword cane. This is my pick of the lot. Best of the Rest category from Josh Taylor. What the judges said, it's a very cool piece. Parenthetically, I'd say I concur. The blade is dead nuts straight, and that is an actual measure, dead nuts straight. And the carving is good. Very stylish use of the natural contours of the wood. This thing is so cool. Oh my God, I'd love to walk the dog with this and just hope that someone steps to us. Best of the rest from Josh Taylor. Cool sword game. All right, so that's from Texas Blade Show. Last, I just want to get to a little note from Knife Rights. It's not a little note. It's quite a victory in the super quote unquote progressive state of Washington. Their spring blade ban repeal passes Senate. So we're talking about automatic knives, and I'm just going to read directly from Knife Rights. Knife Rights Director of Legislative Affairs, Todd Rathner, was in Olympia, Washington on Wednesday to lobby for SB 5534, the bipartisan, I will say again, bipartisan, so everyone thinks this should happen, spring blade ban repeal bill, which went on to pass the Senate by a vote of 46 to 2. It's now off to the House. SB 5534 would repeal the ban on sales and civilian possession of spring blades or automatic knives, as well as specifically exclude them from the definition of dangerous weapon. We sincerely appreciate the efforts of our bipartisan bill sponsors, Senator Twina Nobles and Phil Fortunato, and Senate Law and Justice Committee Chair Manka Dhingra for moving this bill through the Senate. So you could even just look at those names and assume it's bipartisan. I love it. I love that. Too much division in our country right now, and I love seeing people come together over the vanquishing of antiquated and ridiculous knife laws. All right, that said, let's now get to the state of the collection. Before we do, though, I do want to say that I would love it for you to download this show to your favorite podcast app, because this isn't just a video show here. This is released every week, twice a week on all your favorite podcast apps right here. So you can listen on the go and kind of imagine the knives we're talking about as we talk. I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time doing a lot of stuff that I don't want to be doing. And I puts podcasts in my ear and I go to it. You can also help support the show on Patreon. Quickest way to do that is to scan the QR code on your screen or go to TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon. Again, that's TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon.
Adventure Delivered. Your monthly subscription for hand-picked outdoor, survival, EDC, and other cool gear from our expert team of outdoor professionals. TheKnifeJunkie.com/BattleBox.
And now that we're caught up with Knife Life news, let's hear more of the Knife Junkie podcast.
So, good friend of the show and patron, Gentleman Junkie, 5-Door that's Doug. I'll say his first name, Doug, at 5-Door or from 5-Door, was at the Texas Blade Show, and he sent me this really thoughtful little care package. One of the things in the care package was this great sticker from Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Saint Bowie, patron saint of blades. I love it. Thank you, Doug. But he also sent me this very cool neck knife. This is a Jason Jarosz design made by K-Bar, and here is the blade. Beautiful little K-Bar. This is a great little skeletonized neck knife. It's the 7001 BP, and it's got a hollow ground blade. It's wickedly sharp and has this great injection molded sheath. The whole package is super light. I really desperately want to wrap this in jute cord because that's what I like doing with skeletonized blades, but I love seeing the Jarosz logo there. So I might wrap around it and kind of reveal that. But I don't know whether I do or not. This is going to go right into general use, and I'm going to start carrying this just to remind me of my great patrons and also how much I love this little knife. And Jesse Jarosz I said Jason Jarosz before, I'm sorry. Jesse Jarosz, I love his designs. And until I can get a legit custom Jarosz, these K-bars will definitely do and I love this thing. Thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your thinking of me while you were at Blade Show, Texas, but then actually going the extra mile and getting this for me, as well as that really cool sticker. I didn't know about Saint Bowie, but I do believe he is a Vatican approved saint here, saint of the blades. All right, I want to get to the Cold Steel old versus new, but before I do, check out this cool merch Jim has designed. He's always coming up with cool logos and cool designs. Not a knife hoarder, but a collector. I like that. Not a knife hoarder, a collector. I feel like a hoarder from time to time, but really I have to remind myself I'm a collector. And both have their issues, I'll say. I always thought collectors were weird until I had to admit to myself that I was one. And, hoarders, and I'm not trying to cast any aspersions here, but you do have to get rid of some stuff, hoarders, believe me. And I've known and loved two hoarders in my life. And that is something you have to kind of, you don't need that newspaper. That news is old and it's been cataloged on the internet. So get rid of it. So not a hoarder, a collector. All right. Just go to TheKnifeJunkie.com/shop to check out all the really cool designs and all the great logos, pithy maxims that are put on t-shirts, hats, mouse pads, tote bags, and my favorite for the season, the griddle season, or for most of you, the grilling season, that is really cool aprons. So go check those out. All right. You know that I am a collector of cold steel knives, and I have cold steel knives that span the decades. I started my cold steel collection in the 80s, the mid-late 80s, and you'll see one of those knives here compared with a brand new knife of the same category. But I have 6 of them here, six contrasting categories of cold steel I want to show off here. First one from the Vaquero series. This is one that I've had for many years. I'll say at least 22 years. This is the Cold Steel Vaquero Grande. And when they released the very beautiful Vaquero blade based on the Turkish Yatagan, I know it says Vaquero on there because it's also got a little bit of we'll say south of the borderified Navaja sort of involved. I know we're getting a lot of influences in here, but I have it from the man himself, and that is Mr. Lynn Thompson, that this blade was mostly influenced by the Turkish Yatagan with that deep recurve and the centerline point. This was a series of its own. It was this and the El Hombre, which I have, and then a midline 5-inch version of this blade, which I wish I had. Every once in a while, you'll see them on eBay. But the Vaquero blade really took off and is still seen today, very strong in the Voyager series. So here is a very recent Voyager Vaquero. This one rocking the Snaggletooth MF pocket opener there. But you can see when you put them side to side how the blade has changed a bit. And I do love the new one, I got to say, but something about the older, a little more sinuous, a little more curvy and lower pointed Vaquero still has me by the short and curlies. Now this bottom one is the current one. That's a 5.5-inch blade. That's as large as the Vaquero gets now. The older Vaquero Grande is a 6-inch blade. So a little contrast there. Same serration pattern. This one has been used forever. I've used it. I used to carry this in New York City, which scares me now that I think about it in retrospect. But a very, very awesome serration pattern. Like I said, this one has been used and resharpened with great effort because it's a pain in the butt resharpening the serrations of the cold steels. Here's one very, very unused and very sharp. And then here's the one that's used and sharpened. You can see a little bit of wear and tear on there. This one also, if you look at the spine, you can see that this one does not. This is pre-axis lock. When you look at the spine of a cold steel and you see the space between the locking leaf spring there and the blade, that's where the stop pin is. And that's an easy way to tell if it's got an axis lock or not. This was just in their regular back lock days, and not for nothing, it was incredibly strong. The back locks, even then before the axis lock, they were incredibly strong. That's what they based their whole company on, the strength of their blades, strength and sharpness of their blades. So they went to great lengths to make sure their back locks were extremely strong. And then Andrew DeMarco came along and made them even stronger. Also, I love that old school jimping here. It looks like file work right on the thumb portion of the blade. So here we have the Vaquero through the ages. The Vaquero Grande down here, the original, the OG, if you will. And then the 5.5-inch Voyager from today with the triad lock. Love this thing. Both of them. Love them both. Also, the new ones have the AUS 10A steel. And this, you don't know. This was made back in the day before people absolutely positively needed the blade steel designated on the blade. Next up, a neck knife. Oh, I could have done the Spike series too, but I didn't. This one, because I've modified my old Spike series. This one is the Mini Tack. Now we have an old Mini Tack. This is no longer available. This is the Kiradashi. Love this, man. This is a great blade, designed in 2006 by, that's 19 years old as I record this. Designed in 2006 by Andrew DeMarco, who created this line. And if you don't know, Andrew DeMarco is a long-time, like lifelong Japanese martial arts master. He grew up in a family where his father owned an Aikido studio. So he and his brother have been training their whole lives in the Japanese martial arts. And I would not mess with either of them. They're both big dudes, but also they could twist you into knots if they wanted to. But they're nice guys, so don't worry about it. This is a blasted AUS 8. And if you know anything about AUS 8 blade steel and blasting, which I do, because I've had a lot of older cold steels, that AUS 8 blade steel is awesome, especially how, well, it's sort of pedestrian, let's put it that way. But the way Cold Steel did their heat treat on AUS 8, really awesome, very tough, and pretty good edge retention. The only thing is when you blast it, it creates micro pockets, micro divots on the blade. And if you're wearing it close to the body, you can get some rust on that, which I did. I learned with my Spartan. So here's the old one, old Mini Tack in a discontinued model. And then here's the new one, the very popular Bowie blade. And I love this one. It's extremely sharp. It's got a great Bowie shape. And it continues with something I failed to mention on the Kiradashi. The real unique selling proposition of these, besides the fact that they're super light and easy to carry around the neck, is that they have this sub-hilt. These are little sub-hilt knives, and they are 3-finger knives, but that sub-hilt really keeps it in the hand. 3-finger knives can feel tenuous at best in your grip, but with that sub-hilt, that super deep choil, it really just locks in the hand. This one is 8 CR13 MOV, and I know everyone sniffs at that steel. People got sick of it. Every Kershaw, every CRKT was made from this steel. But Cold Steel in recent days took advantage of the fact that I guess there's a trillion tons of it around the world. They bought some up probably for cheap and figured out how to heat treat it to the max. And they've really turned 8CR13 into a pretty quality budget steel. I have it on a couple of I have it on my SR1 Lite, and that is an absolute tank. So don't look down your nose at 8CR13, especially if it's coming from Cold Steel with their incredible heat treat. This seems to have a blasted finish, but I think it's more tumbled. I have not had any issue with this one carrying close to the body. I perspire quite a bit in the summertime. I'm that guy. And I have never had any corrosion resistance issues with this. But you can look going knife to knife. You can see the similarities in the handle, especially with the deep choil and the excellent sub hilt. But so this is an older one. Also, that is a more obviously a GRN handle. This seems to be G10 on the old school mini tack. So G10 versus GRN, OS 8 versus 8CR13 MOV, and blasted versus tumbled. Yeah, this is, I think this one, the current ones are blasted then tumbled. You don't feel that texture. Great sheaths, kind of the same Securex sheath from old to new. Next up, let's talk about the Voyager series. Here is a large Voyager. This is the medium sized at 5 inches from back in the day. This is like late 90s. I think I got this pre 2000s, I'll say. I got this from Roseland Martial Arts, a place, a mythical place at this point. I talked about it with Rolando Escotada because he's a New Yorker, as I once was. I mean, he's born and bred. I was living there for 13 years. But he remembers this place. I talk about it all the time. It used to be in Times Square. Rose was an amazing proprietor of a great martial arts store with an awesome knife counter. And I bought this there. Spent a pretty penny on it at the time. I think it was just over $100. And for me as a freelance producer, just getting my feet wet there, this was a big expense. But this was my sharpest knife for a long time and hallowed in my collection. It's a deeply hollow ground clip point, and I don't think they mentioned the steel on this. Nope. So probably VG1. I think that's what they were making a lot of their stuff out of then, especially their folders. But if you look at this, and the Voyager series continues strong today, but it looks totally different. This again has the non-triad backlock. And by the way, the grip tape, that's my addition, whether on the spine or on the sides of the handle. So you can't see the texturing. It's got kind of a diamond texture. You can see a little of it peeking through right under the backlock here, but a mid backlock, very stout. I think when you put the backlock in the center, it makes it a little more stout because the spring is shorter and all that. But when you look at where the blade meets up that lock spring, there is no space, which connotes the fact that this is a regular backlock and not a triad lock. When you look at it down the spine, you'll see it's asymmetrical. Let me see if I'll hold it right here. And that's because they created a clip integral with the handle. So this GRN handle has a clip kind of like the old school Spyderco clip-it models that is built right into the handle. And I think to accommodate for the extra width coming from the clip, they right around the pivot beefed it up a little. Didn't have to do that for me, but it works nicely, feels great in hand, is wicked sharp. And I love the horn-shaped handle. Even at the time when this came out, I knew it wasn't a Navaja or even trying to really emulate it, but the handle kind of looks a bit like a Navaja because it's got that curved horn-shaped handle that accommodates the curve of the beautiful clip point blade. Really sharp, really thin hollow ground clip point blade. Well, here's the most current in this size category. This is a 5-inch. This is the current 5.5-inch clip point Voyager. You can see all sorts of things happened in 2006 when Andrew Demko redesigned this handle. I can't believe this is almost 20 years old at this point. It's like, I remember when this happened. I remember a lot of stuff a lot further back than 20 years at this point in my life. But this redesign was so welcome. First of all, let's look at the handle. You've got the iron cross shaped texturing that's really grippy and nice in this FRN handle. But you also have a really kind of modular handle. And what I mean by modular is your grip can go all over the place and be sort of equally secure. To start, you can come all the way up and use this finger guard as a de facto choil, finger choil. You can come right up on the blade for quote unquote fine work that we all hear about. Or you can come back into the main position using that finger guard so that if you're thrusting, you're not going to come up on the blade. Or you can move back to this position, probably my favorite position when I'm pretending I'm dueling with it, because you can get the palm on that curve and really get a strong thrust. That back curve of the blade nestles, or of the handle nestles firmly in the palm, but you also have these two choils for your back two fingers to really lock into. Or you can come all the way back. This is one that Lynn Thompson likes, with the pinky way down here. And then you also get this curve butting up into your palm, but you get maximum reach here. To me, it's a little too tenuous a grip. I prefer to be a little bit further on, but you have a lot of grip options with the current design of the Voyager. Also, when you look at the spine, you'll see the space between the tang of the blade and the spring, the lock bar here. And that means that there is a, let me close this just so you can see a little bit. You can see that massive stop pin there. And what that does is when this is fully locked up and you're using the blade, say chopping downwards, for instance, it's transferring all of the energy that's coming into the blade into that stop pin. And then that stop pin transfers all of that energy into the rest of the handle. Whereas in the standard lockback style, if you're chopping or exerting a lot of force into the blade, the energy from the blade goes directly into the lock bar of the back lock here. And that concentrates all of the energy right in this area instead of spreading it throughout the steel frame, which undergirds this handle. So yeah, they did it right. The redesign of this knife was perfect. That's why they haven't changed it in 19 years, I guess. Just to look at the blade real quick, this is also the clip point, but it's got a much longer clip. Looks less like a Western style Bowie, more like a, I mean, if we're going to make comparisons, more like a fighting Bowie. This looks more like a Vaquero, for instance, or like a Laredo, for instance, or a Bagwell style Bowie. So you got a much longer clip there, and you have a full flat ground blade. Still a very, very sharp and thin behind the edge blade. That's what you get from a full flat grind. But also you've got a wedge-like shape, so maybe a little more robust behind the edge than the deep convex surface that you get behind the edge on this older Voyager. And you get a lot of shearing power. You got a downward angled belly on this one. So just awesome. I love the Voyager series. I have every one of the large ones. And now I kind of sold and got rid of some of my smaller versions of the Voyager, but now I'm slowly gaining them back. Don't sell your stuff. I mean, unless you really need to get something new that's fantastic. But you hear all the regret every time. All right, next up, we'll talk about the OG of OGs, the Tonto. This is the first awesome fancy knife I got when I was in high school. The fabled at the time, the fabled Tonto from Cold Steel. I remember my friend, oh, the CIA carries them and they pound them through car doors. And that all made sense to me at the time. Like, of course, because the CIA needs to pound their knife. Like, how else do you get at the bad guys unless you have a knife to get through the car door? And then years passed, I realized my friend was referring to the tests that Cold Steel does on their knives. Well, this is that original Tonto, which came out in, I think, 81. This one is from 87, 88. And as I say all the time, this has been my bedside knife ever since. Like, literally, it followed me everywhere. High school, and then college, and then Philly, and then New York, and then Virginia. Everywhere I've gone, this has gone with me and has been in the bedside drawer, or just before I had kids, just out. This past week, I featured this in my supplemental, and before I did that, I resharpened it, and this thing is just crazy, crazy sharp. But to look at it, these old ones, say Tonto by Cold Steel, Ventura, California, which I love. I don't think they're in Ventura anymore, but they're still in California based. Well, Now that they're a GSM, I'm not sure what the deal is. Made in Japan. Made in Japan, and all that that implies. Japanese knives are awesome, especially back then in the 80s. All the great Almars and the cold steels were made there. This one has a steel that we're not sure of because it's not marked down. I think it's VG1 again. But we have brass fittings, a brass guard and a brass skull crusher. Still the same grippy Grivex material. And after 30 years, it has not disintegrated. I mean, I was kind of concerned all along what's going to happen to this rubber handle as time goes on, but it's still real grippy and still not getting that sticky. It's not filmy. It's not coming off in the hand like you might expect. Beautiful old leather sheath. This is the original leather sheath. It's got really dry. Occasionally I'll rub some mink oil into the seams and stuff, but really dry. The Velcro here has given up the ghost pretty much. I do wish that they had put a snap there. I don't like Velcro so much, only if it's accompanied by a snap, you know. But so this is the original version. And now, as you know, last week I showed this off. This is the new version of the 12-inch Magnum Tanto. So nowadays we've got the blade steel here. Let's see if I can get it to show. There you go. See the line right above the edge right here, this line, that shows you that this is a Sanmai steel. What is Sanmai steel? Sanmai steel is a very hardenable, strong steel in the center for the cutting edge, jacketed with a softer steel. I think in this case it's a 400 series steel. They kind of change it up a bit with cold steel, but so you got VG10 on the edge, very hard, and then you have a softer steel jacketing it and on the spine. That allows for a lot of shock resistance. But you can see, now look at the difference between the tips here. I'm going to hold it in the light so that you can see. Both have hollow ground blades, hollow ground main edges, but where that hollow grind meets the tip, you can see how much sharper the angle is. So you have instead of a rounded junction here between the front tip and the back tip, you have a very, very sharp secondary point there and a flat ground tip. Now, the point of that secondary tip there is it is great in a fighting situation for snap cuts. Now, we see this a lot with Bowie fighting or a lot of knife fighting. That snap cut from the side, it looks like this. You sort of grip here and kind of loosen, grip with the forefinger and the thumb and kind of loosen the back, kind of like you would a drumstick, and you have a percussive hit like that. And you could hit the forehead. I know that's a big target for Lynn Thompson, but it creates a deep triangular cut, and you can really affect that well with that secondary tip. Instead of brass fittings here, we have aluminum on the guard and on the butt cap here, just about the same size in terms of handle length, but different materials, same grippy material on the handle. And now, that's right, we get the Kydex sheath, or I'm sorry, the Securex injection molded plastic sheath, which I'm hot and cold with. On this one, actually, I kind of like it. People talk about how it dulls the blade, but you can draw this in such a way that you're holding the spine against the back of the sheath, and it won't dull. But if you ask me, I'll always opt for a leather sheath. I love me some leather. Unless it's in the waistband, then I'll prefer Kydex. All right, next, the Espada series. And I'm going to show you the difference, especially noticeable in the large model. There's a medium, a large, and an extra large, the notorious 7.5-inch blade. This one is where you see the differences the most. Okay, so it does have the triad lock. All the espadas, the espada was born in the era of the triad, so they all have the triad lock. You've got great, again, much like the Voyager series, you have all these different grip options. You can come up here for your close-in work and use the guard as your de facto choil, or you can come back here and use the guard, or you can come back here. This is a preferred method for slashing and reaching out, or like Lynn Thompson likes, you can come all the way down here. So lots of options. You do have a sub hilt way back here on the handle. It's horn shaped like a classic Navaja, which is what the Espada series is inspired by. But on this old version, you have a deep hollow grind, very thin behind the edge, very slicey and slashy. Aus 8, blasted Aus 8 blade steel, and a thumb plate for pocket snagging and opening as you draw it. But a real big difference between this and the new one, and let's forget for a moment that this new one is in the full dress, because both eras, the older and the newer, have this full dress with the polished G10 and the aluminum bolsters, which I like very much. But all is the same behind the blade, basically. But the difference is the blade shape. Look at the blade shape. We have a much longer, more Spanish style clip here on the older Espada, and a more modern looking Americanized Bowie shape on the newer one. I used to like the more Bowie shaped model better, but now that I don't know, recently I've been into Navajas and I like the longer clip better, but that's just a taste issue. It fluctuates for me, but here we'll see that this is now S35VN, and on the finer version here, S35VN, and it's a flat ground blade. And I have noticed in my dueling that the flat ground doesn't slash quite as deeply as, I'm just kidding. I don't duel, and I haven't noticed any difference. It's probably a little more robust with the flat grind. But that is a huge difference I noticed between the old Espadas and the new Espadas. Now, I consider myself lucky because 3 out of 4 of my Espadas, I also have the G10 large XL and the fine dress XL. All of them are hollow ground except for this one. And you know what? I can live with it. It's just a personal preference, and it makes very, 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 very little difference. All right, now the last is not exactly a one-to-one comparison, but I'm going to look at the old Bowies, big Bowies. Here I have the Laredo, and it's in that beautiful leather sheath. I talk about this a lot. Beautiful leather sheath. I do wish Cold Steel would go back to leather for some of their models, like their fine Bowies and the Black Bear Classic. They should go back to leather. Come on, man. Go back to leather. A beautiful full hide leather sheath here with the giant brass stud. This is meant to slip behind your belt, and it doesn't slip all the way through because it's got that giant stud. I love that. I wish they would go back to that. This one is from, I would say, 2008, 2009. Probably 2009 is the most accurate. It's got faux cocobolo, so kind of fake cocobolo wood here. This one has always had a crack in it, but I've always kept it. I've never returned it. Probably makes it a little less strong, but what am I doing with this knife? I have batoned this, and it's didn't affect that crack. The crack was there when I first got it way back when. But something I've noticed that they've changed is the steel. This is some sort of, is it marked? I don't even think it's marked. Some sort of, I think it's probably carbon V or carbon 5. I'm not sure what the proper term is, because I was able to put to force a patina on this with white vinegar. It always scratched up the blade. The inside of this sheath always scratched up the blade. Maybe you can see a little bit. So I patinaed it way back when, just to kind of cover up the scratches. But I really like how it turned out because it looks like an old Bowie, like an old Bowie. As usual, they have the 0 ground swedge, which makes for a great knife with a back cut. And this one has the brass guard. Really, really love that. But I'm going to contrast this with the new Natchez. I know it's not a one-to-one comparison, but the old Natchez had the leather sheath. It had the, I think some versions had the brass fittings, but here's how they have updated. Yes, as you can see, they have gone to the SecureX sheath, which to me just looks weird with such a fine looking old school Bowie here. But I have actually warmed up to this sheath in particular on this knife. But we have some of the same things here. We have the 0 ground swedge for an awesome back cutting action. We got a longer blade on this one, but we have aluminum again on the guard and butt cap. Actually, the guard is steel, the butt cap is aluminum. Forgive me. But nice in every way, a luxury Bowie knife. But I got to say, this sticks in my craw just a bit because wouldn't this look cool with the old school black leather sheath that they used to have with the silver stud coming out? Yes, it would. That's your answer. And that's it for this show. Thank you for joining me on this just walk down memory lane with the Cold Steel knives, where they were and, how it's going now, or let's say how it started and how it's going now, as the meme goes. And I love them both. And I'm really happy to have this old, like kind of a deep Cold Steel collection. They've always kind of been my favorite brand, even though there are other things that my favorite knife isn't a Cold Steel, I don't think, but still, I'm just a huge fan of the Cold Steel knives. Be sure to join us this coming week for episode 581 with Tom Nugent of Knives by Nuge, the man who makes this super cool Wicket. Love this thing. And we have a great conversation. What a mensch. Love that guy. And so join us for that. Also, be sure to join us tomorrow night if you're watching this as it drops for Thursday Night Knives. If you're not watching this as it drops, Thursday Night Knives is live on YouTube every week at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come join the conversation. It's a great time. All right, for Jim working his magic behind the switcher, I'm Bob DeMarco saying, until next time, don't take dull for an answer.
Thanks for listening to the Knife Junkie podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review at reviewthepodcast.com. For show notes for today's episode, additional resources, and to listen to past episodes, visit our website, TheKnifeJunkie.com. You can also watch our latest videos on YouTube at TheKnifeJunkie.com/YouTube. Check out some great knife photos on TheKnifeJunkie.com/Instagram, and join our Facebook group at TheKnifeJunkie.com/Facebook. And if you have a question or comment, email them to bob@TheKnifeJunkie.com or call our 24/7 listener line at 724-466-4487, and you may hear your comment or question answered on an upcoming episode of the Knife Junkie podcast.